is much different than the guys he already has. Look at him here in press coverage.
WEEI, it's KJ Carson. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with me. 617-779-7937. Text line 37937. That's from the draft night where Christian Gonzalez, which I thought was the right pick at 17. Okay, now I thought that the goal was to get Mac more protection as soon as possible. So Belichick more likely to drop down, which he did again, versus moving up, which I was hoping to, because I'm just one of those believes that you need to go find a life-changing offensive tackle for Mac Jones unless it's not what you believe in. You've probably heard 3 is the magic number, or sometimes you hear 1, 2, 3. Sometimes that tells you what the whole process is, and what do you know? Defense, defense, defense. See, Belichick, I believe, knows that he'll be able to cover his behind on the defensive end, but doesn't necessarily believe that the offense will be able to cover theirs. Now, if you remember last year, where some people thought, like, okay, shouldn't have Cole Strange been like a second-round pick, but 1-2 was offense, okay? Previous year, offense. So over the last couple of years, now granted, there have been some picks like Christian Barmore on the defensive end, the defensive side that, was really starting to pan out. The offensive side guys, Ramondre Stevenson is like kind of considered like, oh, wow, that's cool. But in terms of like moving forward, I think Belichick has kind of drawn a line in the sand. I know I'll be able to stick with the defense. I may just eventually have to go pay for the offense. Here's why. This is the season where the Patriots most likely have to come to Mac Jones and say, either we are or we are not giving you your 5th-year option. I don't think you wait until year 4. Now, you might think it might be pretty cool to do so, but again, after this year, to be going into year 4. So you're gonna have to let him know at some point. And if that's the case, and right now you're leaning, no, you're not going to give him a 5th year, then no, you're not at 1, 2, 3. Get something to protect him. Now, great, you got Jake Andrews, a guard, in the 4th round, but let's just be honest. We're kind of thinking like, hey, this kicker from Maryland better come through in the 4th round. And then, these other guys, Sal and Mafi, what you're hearing is we're trying to convert these guys or maybe turn this guy into that or that guy turns. Well, wait a minute. I got a good friend here in Boston. He does home rehabs. Rarely does he do a renovation. Like, renovation is kind of like, I'm happy with the kitchen, but we need to kind of make adjustments to the living room. Or maybe it's time to do the bathrooms, but the living rooms and the kitchens are fine. Rehab is when you see all the stuff on the street. And Belichick is not doing any type of refurbishing or remodeling. Rehabbing. Just look at the receiving corps. Does that look like a remodeled group or a rehabbed group? The offensive line, remodeled or rehabbed? And Anthony does a beautiful job with homes. Andrew, this guy, like, he's been featured in the Globe. Like, he will go and, like, I'm like, how much you pay for that house? It's like, where do you find a house for $50,000 that doesn't have a dead body in it, But he takes these houses and next thing you know, 7-8 times value, but he's got to completely rehab them. They don't even look the same when he bought them. Now, where does Bill do remodeling? With the defense. Belichick, in his entire career, has not had a defensive issue. In his entire career. And that's impressive because as the game is changing, nobody's really running laps around Belichick saying, oh, the game's gotten past him. He can no longer do this. No, 1, 2, 3, all on the defensive side. Because he knows that his formula has been working. Even in bad years when the defense maybe finishes like 15th or something like that, it's still better than half the league. But the offense, Why invest when maybe you just don't believe in what's in front of you? 617-779-7937. Text line 37937. So, of course, a lot of the talk is about Kashan Boutte. It's French, the wide receiver out of LSU who's already signed, 6th round. This is kind of like take a flyer. If he can be all these different things, then you've got a steal or a rehab project, right? It's not a remodel. Does not the receiver room need a rehab situation? So, I'm like a remodel says, okay, and Tyquan Thornton can be that remodel guy, right? You took him in the 2nd round last year. He showed some signs of being consistent coming off of the collarbone injury. So there were some things that made you say, okay, this is something. But everybody was screaming you need a receiver because you felt like the room needed to be completely rehabbed. The offensive line, while it had a horrible string of like a month and a half, it did get a little bit better towards the end of the year. But let's just call it what it is. You think that needs a remodel or rehab? The quarterback, I don't think is a rehab. But if you're going to do a remodel, it's like you can't do the kitchen and then not do the bathroom right next to it. Like the plumbing is on the same, you know what I mean, Andrew? The plumbing is on that same line. So you can't, like, we're going to have a 50 style kitchen, but a modern bathroom. Okay, until one day you make a hard flush. What's happening with the kitchen? You probably should do that stuff together just because of the piping. Same thing with the quarterback and the offensive line. So why I was a bit baffled at the trade with Pittsburgh to allow them to take an offensive lineman, I'm thinking, well, you need an offensive lineman. Why not? Unless there's something you see that you don't like, and I can't argue that because, again, if you believe, that that Christian Gonzalez is going to be a better suit for what you do in your remodeling process, then by all means go for it. That's why I'm not upset, because if you told me what would your ideal order would have been for the Patriots in terms of pick, I would have said offensive lineman 1, cornerback 2, safety 3. And this is before the talk of, potentially moving Jones to safety or whatever to think about doing. But still, I thought getting another safety in there. And what did they do in round 3? They got a safety. Keon White, I thought edge rusher would be probably the 4th choice, but he was the best available there in the 2nd round. Why? Because the really good offensive linemen, and some of us were screaming about, what about Dawad Jones? And then I'll be honest, when I was watching, because I'm trying to figure out, like, why am I watching day 2? Like, I'm really addicted to this stuff. But I'm watching, and what I like to do is look at the environment around you when your name is being called. If you remember a couple of years ago, and Andrew, you might remember this as well. Can't remember the guy's name, but he gets drafted. He's a 1st-round pick, offensive lineman. His girlfriend is on his girlfriend tries to jump on his lap. The guy's mother snatches her off of the lap. It becomes like this little mini argument there as they're going to the player and away from the player. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
So, say again?
The guy, what was his name? I can't remember his name, but on draft night, this is only a couple years ago, on draft night, as he's getting drafted, his girlfriend jumps on his lap and tries to hug up on him. The mother then snatches the girl off of his lap, and he's embarrassed of all this happening.
Ooh.
I say, you remember that?
I think I do. I don't know. I'm blanking on who, though. Do you remember what?
You know why we can't remember his name? Because he only played 1 snap in the NFL.
I see what you're doing there.
Right. So when Dawad Jones was taken, I was kind of like, I saw people like reaching for hats. Like, you know how you have all the hats of who could choose you? And I guess like when people, when they knew that who wasn't choosing him, people started taking the other hats. I was like, oh boy. The little things. I'm a parent. I look for those little things that say, maybe Bill knows something. If you've got all that extra activity going on your draft night, that's why people who are making the comments about Keon White, you're dead wrong. That guy's not upset. That dude is going to be coming in like this flashback movie. Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's when Forrest Whitaker gets his car damaged, and doesn't know that his brother and Sean Penn have wrecked the car. So they paint on the opposing high school's name on there saying we're going to kill him, and he's thinking that that's who did it, and the dude just absolutely kills everybody on the other team. That's going to be Keon White. Because you thought you were going to go the day before and you didn't, and so now someone sees your value early on and says you shouldn't be here at this point, and we're going to take you, and that's going to be motivation right there. I think you'll like what you see, and plus Belichick will get it out of him because he took defense 1, 2, 3.